In the bitter winter of 1887, Wyoming territory lay buried beneath heavy snow. Clara Whitmore, a young widow, struggled to keep her small ranch alive after her husband's death. The cattle were weak, the fences were broken, and the cold wind slipped through every crack in the old farmhouse. Her 2 children had little food, and the last cow gave barely enough milk for them. One evening, as darkness covered the valley, Clara heard a knock. At her door stood a tall stranger wearing a worn coat and carrying an old leather bag. Snow clung to his shoulders, and exhaustion showed on his face. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I'm Thomas Reed. I'm looking for work." Clara hesitated. "I have no money to pay you." Thomas glanced toward her children. "Then give them milk," he said. "I'll work for it." Thomas spent the next morning inspecting the ranch. He walked through the broken fence, examined the empty water trough, and studied the cattle tracks in the snow. Clara followed him, wondering what a stranger could possibly do that she had not already tried. "Your cattle need shelter from the north wind," Thomas explained, "and your fence must be repaired before the next storm." Clara sighed. "I have no lumber." Thomas pointed toward the abandoned shed near the creek. "There's enough wood there." Before noon, he had begun tearing the old shed apart. By sunset, he had repaired half the fence with his own hands. Clara watched silently from the porch. For the first time in months, someone was fighting for her ranch, instead of simply telling her it was hopeless. That night, she placed a warm bowl of milk and bread before Thomas. He smiled and said, "Tomorrow, we save the cattle." The next morning, Thomas rose before sunrise and found the ranch buried beneath another layer of snow. The wind howled across the fields, but he refused to stop. He led the cattle toward the sheltered valley behind the hills, breaking a path through the snow with a shovel. Clara followed with a lantern, carrying blankets for the children. By noon, Thomas had repaired the water trough and built a rough shelter from the old lumber. "You've done more in 2 days than I could do in 2 months, Clara said. Thomas shook his head. "You had no help," he replied. "That was the problem." His words stayed with her as they worked together until evening. Over the following weeks, the ranch slowly began to change. Thomas repaired the barn roof, strengthened the gates, and taught Clara how to store hay safely against future storms. He never complained about the cold or asked for payment. One evening, Clara discovered him sitting beside the dying fire, staring at an old photograph. "Who are they?" she asked gently. Thomas looked down. "My wife and daughter," he answered. "I lost them years ago during a harsh winter." Clara understood then why he had been so determined to save her children. Thomas quickly folded the photograph away, but Clara placed another piece of wood on the fire. Neither spoke for several minutes. By spring, the snow finally disappeared. The cattle had survived, the fields were green again, and the ranch looked stronger than it had in years. Clara offered Thomas half the ranch, but he refused. "I never came here for land," he said. "I only wanted your children to have milk and your family to have a chance." Clara smiled through tears. "Then perhaps you should stay," she whispered. Thomas looked at the warm farmhouse, then at Clara and her children standing in the doorway. For the first time in many years, he smiled without sadness. "Perhaps I should," he said. And that winter, which had nearly destroyed them, became the beginning of their new life together.